Hi, this is Penny Kelly, and this meditation, titled Healing the Sea Animals, is the third in a series of meditations designed to heal the Pacific Ocean of the effects of radiation from the Fukushima nuclear disaster. A friend named Walter Mora felt he had to do something, so he began inviting people to come together in KINS groups to talk about what we might do to help. These meditations arose out of those meetings. Earlier in our meetings, we did a little meditative work on getting to know the oceans in general, and then understand radiation, and then the mind and consciousness. So today, we are going to use some of what we've developed in previous meditations in today's journey. So as we begin, I want to share a story told in the movie Favela Rising. A favela is a slum, and this story is about Anderson Sa, an Afro-reggae musician living in a favela in Rio de Janeiro in 1993. The favela was one of the most violent favelas in the city, and for some reason, Anderson decided he was going to take on crime in the favela with his music. And so he started writing songs and performing songs about what was happening in the favela. And I think he started naming names and, challenging some of the gang leaders. And they went after him. And he stood his ground. It's an amazing story. But he stood his ground when some of the biggest gangs in the area threatened him. And he managed to befriend the leaders of those gangs and eventually reduce the number of gangs from 2,500 to just a handful. And he was pretty well known at that point, as a real activist with his music. So one day he went out surfing and he had a terrible accident when a wave slammed him into some rocks and broke his neck. So he was in the hospital and he was fully paraplegic. He really didn't want to live. Because of his fame, a well-known surgeon offered to do some surgery on him in the hopes that maybe he might regain the ability to walk and sing again. But it was known that the surgery was not always successful, and in fact I think it had a very small success rate, but sometimes, sometimes it would succeed. So the night before the surgery, Anderson was in the hospital bed and there were friends all around and they were trying to cheer him up and talk to him and tell him it was going to be okay, and he wasn't really having much of it. And it was very, very late. I think they said it was around midnight or so, maybe shortly after, when a woman dressed all in white came to the door of Anderson's hospital room. And she said she was looking for someone named Anderson and that she had a message. And she told them that she had been talking with the gods, and the god of the ocean had asked her to come and give Anderson Sa a message. And the message was, "I am sorry for your injury. I will restore your ability to walk very soon now." I guess the guys around the hospital bed said their hair started to stand up when she started to speak, and they just had this feeling that something very, very unusual was happening. So anyway, the next day was the surgery, and it was successful. It was one of those few cases where it worked. And when he was released, Anderson walked out of the hospital on his own two legs. He eventually returned to singing and helping to raise the quality of life in the favelas. And I mentioned this story because I want you to be aware of power. Anderson was a pretty ordinary guy, But he used the power that he had at his fingertips, the power of music, to make people aware that life could be better for all. Many of the gangs then used their power differently to move on into life outside the gangs. The woman dressed in white who showed up at the hospital room also had power. She had the power to communicate with other forms of consciousness, especially that of the ocean. And then there was the ocean itself, who found someone able to talk with it in order to send Anderson its message of hope and imminent restoration. And then there was the surgeon, who used his power to do what he knew how to do best. And all together, with each one using the power that they knew and they had, it added up to a very large and encompassing network of power and consciousness. And in today's meditation, we are going to go into the ocean to focus on establishing healing relationships with the sea animals who live in that ocean. So here's a very tiny list of the creatures who live in the oceans. There is the anemone, the angelfish, the anglerfish, the octopus, the pufferfish, the stingray, the sand dollars, sea cucumbers, sea horses, sea lions, barnacles are alive, barracuda, bony fish, clownfish, the conch, coral reefs are alive, the catfish, the blue crab, dolphins, flounder, the green crab, the glass shrimp, the hermit crab, the horseshoe crab, bottlenose dolphins, plankton, the electric eel, jellyfish, starfish, sea dragons, sharks, squid, swordfish, sea turtles, sea urchins, walrus, whales, lobsters, manatees. These and many other animals who live in the Pacific Ocean need healing, and they need hope. They need hope that conditions will improve and life will be saved in the region of the ocean they live in. So, we are going to introduce ourselves to them and become personally acquainted with them. So begin to relax yourself and let go of your immediate surroundings. Find a spot to sit or a place to lay down. And like we always do at the beginning of the meditations, take 3 really deep breaths, full body breaths that fill you all the way to your toes. So I'll give you a moment to breathe in 3 times. Again. And one more. And then imagine that you're seeing your body as if you were standing across the room. Let that body just do its ordinary, natural breathing. And just watch it for a moment. And then move back into the body and feel your feet on the floor, or your body on the bed, or your hands in your lap, or feel the back of your neck. And just for a moment, feel a sense of gratitude for the amazing collection of cells that work together so beautifully to provide you with a physical vehicle. And then pull out of the body again and go back across the room. Turn and see yourself sitting or perhaps lying there so quietly. And be aware that you have a powerful sense of self, whether you're in or out of the body. And you can use plain old energy to move that self about. Then begin to move out of the room your body is in. Leave the body, just sit or lay there. And envision yourself moving to the edge of the Pacific Ocean. Keep going until you are aware that you are standing on her lip, right there where water meets sand. And be aware that she has swallowed many a sailor over the millennia. That is part of her power. Now be aware of the Pacific and her immense power. And realize that if you are going to work with her, you have to be as sure and conscious of your power as she is of hers. And have no doubt, she is conscious. She is aware, as we learned in the story of Anderson the musician above. So take off your shoes and socks and leave them on the sand. And imagine you're sticking your toes into the water. You're just walking in just a little bit. Notice how cool, how wet the water is as you stand there with waves washing gently over your toes. For a moment, expand your consciousness to try to get a full awareness of that great ocean. Can you see her face? Can you hear her voice? Is she talking to the sand and the land? Send the message that you are coming to visit, just like you would do with any friend. You don't just drop in, but you have to be polite enough to let things and people know that you're coming. And then step into the water and start walking, and keep walking until you are up to your waist. Never mind your clothes. So you're going to get wet. When the water is up to your waist, just stop for a minute and remember, she has the power to swallow you, to overwhelm you if you become mindless. And then remember, you have your own power. The power to breathe in life energy regardless of where you are. Whether you're in the air, under the ground, buried in the snow, far away in space, deep in the ocean. Because breathing is literally the power to take in the energy of life. Be aware also that you have the ability to send life energy wherever you want to send it. Sending energy to anyone or anything is really just the simple power to recognize another form of life, another being, a being made of energy just like you, and that you can respond to the patterns of consciousness that are everywhere and in all things. And as we go deeper into the ocean, we will use the ability to draw in life energy and recognize others, to create shapes and actions that will generate the effects we want for one another. And then, conscious of your power, slowly move on into the water. Keep going as it rises above your waist and comes up to your armpits and then your chin. And then sort of like lift yourself into a horizontal position and begin moving gracefully through the water as if you were a fish, breathing steadily and slowly as you get further from shore. Keep going. Keep going until you can no longer see the bottom far below you, and begin swimming under the surface. And keep going until you can't see the surface high above you either. As you travel into the depths, notice that you have developed eyes on the sides of your head, and eyes on your shoulders, and eyes on the ends of your toes. And keep all of these eyes open so that you can learn from what you see and begin to pay attention to the many kinds of sea animals moving by or around you. You should see big fish and tiny fish, all kinds of fish. There's a huge variety of life filling the ocean at every level, shallow and deep. And when you get out to the center of the ocean, stop moving for just a moment and just watch one of the creatures who interests you. Notice what it is. Watch how it moves. And see if you can understand, what is it doing? Why is it doing whatever it's doing? And stay very quiet and peaceful inside and just observe. And keep watching. Remember what you see. And then notice that some of the creatures seem to be quietly watching you as well. Notice that they seem curious and interested in you and what you're doing there, as if they know that it's really unusual for a human to be out there in the deep. But just observe them steadily, continuing to breathe slowly and easily, as you would among friends, until you find one or maybe more, maybe a small group of sea creatures that might be approachable. Send out a telepathic message in which you introduce yourself. Tell your name. Ask if whoever you're talking to has an individual name. If there's more than one, greet each one. Or if there's a lot, greet each type of sea animal and try to come up with something personable, something like, I know this is unusual for me to be here, but I come with love. Or maybe something like, I'm really pleased to meet you here in your own space of life. Or whatever comes to you. Try to make it personal. And then add that you are there with some really good news regarding the radiation that has been leaking into the ocean and causing so much difficulty and illness. Tell, all the sea creatures, everybody that's within earshot, that you are part of a group of humans who love the great ocean and all of her creatures dearly. And that you and others are there to help heal the wounds brought on by the radiation. Ask your newfound friend or group of friends, if it's more than one, if they would be willing to send out an invitation to everyone in their circle, all their family, their friends, and invite them to a healing circle of humans now present in the belly of the ocean. And if they have questions, listen carefully to the questions and honor those questions. Answer as honestly and humbly as you can. And remember what they tell you or what their response is. I'll give you a moment to listen. And then repeat your invitation if necessary. Ask them to please gather as many as they can who might need healing or strengthening or even just reassurance that help is on the way. And tell them you will meet them in the great current of water that flows between Fukushima and the west coast of the United States. And then feel yourself beginning to move in that direction. You're going to move in a northward direction. You're moving toward the northern Pacific. And as you get into that current, feel little prickles of radiation as you enter that current. And close your eyes and rest, for a moment. Get acclimated to the current and the radiation. Remember your power in terms of radiation. And just kind of wait while the invitation goes out to all of the sea animals in all corners of the ocean. Just float there quietly and listen. See if you can hear the message going out, even though you may not speak the language being used. Sometimes you can feel that. Just continue to rest. Feel your own gentleness, along with the power of life that you carry. And then finally, open your eyes and see who has arrived. Ask all those who have shown up to move into the center of the circle. And tell those in the circle that you are going to create a healing process, and they just need to remain quiet and still, and they need to trust. And then, drawing on the tremendous power of consciousness to create motion and form, look directly into the circle and begin to see waves of energy forming above that group of animals, sea animals, that form a great sphere of animals wanting healing. See these frequencies form like a great net of the finest of frequencies. And then see that net slowly sinking down onto the entire circle of sea creatures, and even the humans. And give directions for that net to be drawn together under those in the circle as well, enclosing all the creatures in the net. And as soon as they are enclosed, begin to hum a soothing chant in your mind, and at the same time begin pulling that net toward yourself. Keep pulling, and keep pulling. Breathe steadily as you work, and keep drawing that net through the water and right through the sea animals, catching the radiation that they have absorbed and pulling it out of them like a great sieve that does no harm to the animal, just collects the radiation. Keep breathing deeply. Keep pulling that net, dragging it through the water. Keep removing particles of radiation from that entire area. And when all of the creatures are free of the net, thank them all for coming. Tell them you hope they're feeling much better. Tell them that we will be back in 2 weeks, and they are invited to attend the healing ceremony for the Great Pacific, and that we'd be honored to have them attend. And in fact, we'd be grateful for their energy in the process. And then say goodbye, and watch them all swim away, healthy, feeling good. Now turn your attention to the net. You now have a great net full of radioactive particles that need to have some kind of change happen for them. They need to have their spin changed and their charge shifted. So using your knowledge of radiation gained in the earlier meditation journeys, look into the net, which is like a huge bag of particles, and see that there are a variety of particles. Red and blue particles, those are the alpha particles, green beta boy particles, and a slew of gamma waves trying to escape the net. And as you look at all this, recall your experience in the ocean of frequencies. and your discovery that there was really no difference between you and the particles and the waves that moved about in the eternal ocean. You were simply a small body of concentrated frequencies working together and communicating beautifully as one being. And in suddenly realizing that this net full of frequencies and particles is no different from you, and that all of these particles and waves are looking for love and looking for partners and looking for patterns they can fit into, remember all the times that you have been looking for all those same things. And as you recall those times, reach your hand into the net and with great compassion, understanding, and power, open your hand and feel huge waves of loving energy flow out of your hand. Swirl your hand around inside that net, distributing that love everywhere and stirring the particles and waves as if you're making a big cake. And continue to swirl your hand. Keep going until you feel the mixture thickening and then getting thicker yet. And notice that the particles are changing color to a silvery white. And realize that they are falling in love. They are attracted to one another. And slowly, they end up in a large, benign glump of particles. When all the particles are in this big glump, take that glump out of the net, and if it's still a little pliable, feel free to shape it into something special. A sculpture of some sort, maybe. And then, when you're done shaping it, set it down on the floor of the ocean as a beacon of hope to all creatures. That beacon of hope is to let them know that help is on the way and change is coming. You are now ready to go. Say goodbye to the many creatures who live in the ocean and begin to swim back, traveling to the area where you left your shoes and socks on the beach, on the sand. And come right up on the shore. As you are walking out of the water, run your hands lightly over the surface, and as if you're patting goodbye to a friend, tell the great ocean that you love her. And you will return in a couple of weeks. Feel that energy of love moving out of your hands and into the water. And then move fully up onto shore. Once you're back on the edge of the water, pick up your shoes and socks, and now feel yourself moving back to the place where you left your body, sitting or laying. Enter back into the body and feel your feet and your toes and your hands and your belly. Feel the back of your neck. And take a deep breath of return. Stretch and begin to reorient yourself to the everyday and your work on the land. And we thank you for your efforts.